G'day everyone, welcome back to another video, and here I am sheltering from this rainstorm here, camping out in a farm shed. And for this video I've got a traditional canvas hammock set up, and I'm also going to be doing a bit of a cook up as well. And I've got all traditional gear for this one because I want to look at those historical swagmen, or Australia's hobo, who basically walked from farm place to farm place looking for work. What kind of work did they get? And when they camped at a farm, how would they camp out? What was their quarters like? So I'm going to look at the history of that. It's going to be a bit of a good video, so stick around. G'day everyone, welcome back to another video. And in this video I'm down here, bit of a different camp. I'm in our farm shed. This is our wood shed. We've got quite a few sheds. We've got hay sheds, we've got cattle sheds. This is where we store our wood, and it's been a very rainy day today. I think almost 20 or 30 mil or something like that has come through. I haven't checked, but and we've got more rain coming in through the night. So I want to shelter in an old farm shed with my camping setup, kind of my bedroll setup, and it's going to be a little bit different for this video. I want to look at the history as well of the early 1900s swagman, who, or the hobo, that's an American word. We had the swagman, and how they would actually go from farm to farm looking for work, and what kind of quarters they could often find themselves in for the night. And so that's the whole point of this video. I'm going to have a cook up as well and just share a little bit of history about the travelling farmhand worker.
Australia's version of the travelling hobo was the swagman. These were men who would carry their bedroll over their shoulder, walking from town to town, looking for work, usually on farms. During the Great Depression of 1929, Australia saw the last wave of wandering swagmen who would often seek whatever job they could, mostly in rural communities. The kind of work these men would do on farms ranged from sugarcane cutting in the north to many other types of jobs, like being a shearer or a shepherd watching over the flocks. Some were loggers, others were jackaroos, and some helped in building fences. Whatever odd jobs needed to be done, there usually was a travelling worker to fill the position. Life was hard for him, and the wages were often not the best. His camp was often rough, with only a few essential items on him, like a bedroll, a billy, and some simple food to eat, and maybe a tobacco pipe with a bit of baccy.
Now, I've done a lot of videos emulating the swagman as he's out on the road and out in the bush and out in the, the countryside, and how they'd camp, out in the bush with his bedroll and his swag and stuff like that. But I've never really done a video on them, how they might camp when they're actually on a farm doing some work, because a lot of them were travelling workmen, as I explained the different kind of jobs that they did. I've read a lot of different materials on first-hand accounts of the travelling swagman, or the travelling farm worker, and their accommodation could range from a nice quarters where there was a bed and everything like that, and then sometimes they were given little sheds and little huts and things like that, and really kind of rough quarters. And this is what this is kind of emulating, these kind of rough quarters. Go out in the barn or the farm shed and stuff like that, and you can set up there. And of course in this rainy weather you'd want to be undercover, and that's the whole point of this this camp. So yeah, it's interesting looking at the history and how some of them would camp, and some of them had it rougher than others as well. And so for this camp I'm gonna set up my bedroll, but I've got it, because I'm on a slant here, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to try and make myself a bit of an old school looking traditional hammock. Let's see how we go. That's the question. Pretty good. I reckon that's pretty good. Alright, so this is my setup here. Now I did have a cotton rope, but it's just too lightweight. It wasn't going to hold my weight, so I've switched over to the nylon. I know that's something they wouldn't have had, so I don't have heavier duty. I don't have heavy duty cotton rope at the moment, so that'll have to do. But yeah, so this is kind of a bit of a hammock setup, and this is my oilskin. This is one of my thicker, more canvas oilskins that I often use, and I've got a woolen blanket in as well. I've got a couple of homemade oilskins, but this one I thought is going to work much better as a bit of a hammock because it's going to hold my weight better. Now, obviously, hammocks have been around for a long time. Sailors obviously would have used them, especially those who came over on the convict boats and things like that. It was a great way for setting up on uneven ground, and I know in the 1900s, early 1900s, they had the jungle hammock during the World War, I think World War II, and that was heavily used as well. So the idea of using this kind of a setup could have been around, especially when sleeping on uneven ground. So yeah, it's not too bad, I think. I wasn't actually trusting this end, so I've just put a ratchet strap there. Obviously no ratchet straps back in the day, but it just gives me a bit of a peace of mind that where my head is not going to fall down and hit the concrete tonight. One thing we have a lot of on the farm is all these old kind of equipment, farm equipment from, again, mid 1900s, 1940s, 1950s, things like that. With an old firefighting tank there, and even the wood here is all recycled wood and recycled tin, and at least a lot of this wood actually, and these posts and stuff like that, is 1950s kind of era that I'm going for. So that's what I love about this little section of our farm, is that it kind of feels pretty authentic to that kind of era. I was actually going to camp down in that shed tonight. Yeah, I had it all set up to go camp down in that shed tonight, but we recently got cattle, 7 steers, and they're using that for shelter, and they've made a mess of the place. There's just crap everywhere. It stunk in there, so at least here, this fence here is what stops the cattle from coming up into this section. So this kind of little shed, I thought, oh, it doesn't smell, there's no crap here, the cattle can't come in the night. This was a bit nicer to sleep in for tonight. And yeah, it's nice being on a farm now with some cattle, and yeah, eventually they will be meat for us, but they're pretty young at the moment, and yeah, it's been nice seeing them settle in. There's a lot of pasture for them to eat at the moment, so they're very, very happy, and everything's so green right now because of the rain. This is actually bloody comfy. I like this. It's really cleared up now. I do see some clouds coming, and it is going to rain more tonight. We got a lot of rain this morning, so anyway, it's nice being under this shelter, and hopefully this tin, there's a few holes in there, hopefully I'll be okay. I can always wrap myself up in the oilskin, the canvas oilskin as well, if it does start dripping on me, so it'll be an interesting night nonetheless. Also, I thought I'd just show you as well, I'm currently wearing the Bearded Bushranger cotton denim shirt. I really like this shirt, it's a nice one, and you can pick these up on my merch store, as well as a bunch of other types of shirts as well. So for the rest of this year, I've got planned a few videos still, and I definitely have one big survival adventure that I'm going to do on the coast. I'm looking forward to doing that one, and that's kind of going to finish off the year. But it's been a really good year. I didn't hit that 50,000 subs that I was hoping to get. I might still, but I doubt I will. That's alright. YouTube was really good at the start of the year, and then just went something changed, and with the algorithm switch up, and it's been a real struggle for the second half of the year, but that's alright. I've got some good plans for some good adventures coming up next year, but I'll probably do a live stream in January to explain a little bit more about that. I'm also currently, I know I've been meant to do this for a long time. I'm getting my firearms license at the moment. And yeah, I'll probably start off getting like a 22 or something, and just popping off rabbits and doing little catch and cooks. So if anyone's got any good suggestions for some heritage, heritage, nice heritage looking, you know, 22s, that would be great. And further on, the plan is to, yes, get onto shooting deer on the property. There's a lot I can do video wise when I start doing that, so definitely want to get into that. And over the summer I'll just be, you know, shooting rabbits and stuff. On that point, if anyone has you know, a bunch of bushland, farm property with a bunch of bushland on it, and if next year, I'd love to do a survival challenge, like a 4-day survival challenge where I just, you know, shooting rabbits to get by with a 22 and just live off the land for 4 days. And if, you know, people are not comfortable with that, even just maybe an air rifle. I know that doesn't have that historical aspect to it, but I'd really love to do a little challenge like that. So I just thought I'd put it out there. If people have property that they'd be willing to have me kind of roam out in the bush for 3 or 4 days, I wouldn't bother anyone. I'd be very responsible and very respectful of the property. But yeah, I thought I'd throw that out there. I'm also booked in February. I'm on a waiting list to do a sailing course because for those of you who don't know, I bought a little wooden dinghy this year as well. And it's a sailing dinghy, and I really want to get into sailing. I'm a complete rookie at it, and I want to get into sailing so that I can do some bigger adventures out on the open water. I'm really looking forward to that. So a few good plans coming up for next year. Definitely stay tuned for that. Otherwise, it's getting a bit later. I reckon it's time for a cook up. Alright, to make it easy for myself tonight, I've got my little stove here that I'm going to cook on. And because I'm on such a slope, I can actually just put these front legs down. And that's, well, it kind of looks like it's level, I think. Anyway, let's get a little fire going. Oh, that helps. So much smoke, I thought I'd put that on. Alright, let's get some dinner going. For dinner, I'm going to make a bit of a stew. I've got some bread. I might use this as a table to prepare. Now, I have some fallow deer meat here. Now, the main kind of meats that they would have had, the old Swagmen and the Wanderers and the Workers, would be wallaby, and they'd often call it being on the wallaby. And the other thing that they'd often have is mutton. So I don't have that right now, so I'm going to have fallow meat instead. And basically I'm going to cook up a bit of a stew and see how we go. Cut up this one spud I've got. Now, one thing I forgot to bring down, which they would have often would have used in their soup, is a bit of flour. And a bit of flour would just basically make that stew a little bit thicker. But what I'll do is I'll just dip the bread in there and it'll soak it all up, and I'll just eat it straight from here. Might break up this bread and just have it in there. Not bad. The old stew is definitely something that the old timers would have eaten. Quite common. and it's starting to spit again, and I reckon that rain's definitely coming in for the night. I think it's going to be a good night. I'm going to just lay back and drink my beer and enjoy the fire. Not a bad night, lots of rain, very sheltered in here, absolutely no issues at all. This is a corncob pipe, and these are, besides the plastic bit at the end, this is something that was quite often used in the 1900s by farmers and the like. But anyway, I'm pretty happy with this setup and how it went last night. I think I need to get some stronger natural fibre rope to just make it a little bit more authentic. Obviously the ratchet strap is a little bit modern, but oh well, it's what I had at the moment. This canvas heavy duty oilskin did really well, and this can be used as a tarp, it can be used as a swag, and it's much more heavy duty than my other one, so it does hold the weight really well. This is a 50-50 mix of linseed oil and mineral turp, so it is actually waterproof. Next time I'd probably make it a little bit longer because I have to bend my knees to really fit into it. But I'm really fascinated with the stories of the Swagmen, which were basically our version of the hobo. The Americans had the hobo, we had the Swagmen, and how they would walk from farm to farm looking for work. Yeah, they'd camp out in the bush for sure, but they'd also you know, camp out in places like this, and I'm sure they had hammock setups back in the day. They definitely did on the ships and stuff like that, but they could have had them in shearers' quarters and stuff like that. Now there's a lot of resources out there, material, if you want to learn more about the Swagmen and how they lived, you know, whether it was in the bush or when they were working on farms. The Swiss Swagman is a great book from, it's a fella's journals. He was a Swiss man in the 1800s who travelled around with his swag, and you know, there's different stories in there where sometimes he'd sleep under a log in the bush when it was raining, other times he'd have a little hut out in the fields that he'd sleep in. So yeah, definitely a mixture of kind of places he'd lay his head down for a rest. And then for a more modern look at the Swagmen, like as in that kind of mid-1900s, the Great Depression, the last wave of the Swagmen, I'd recommend the movie Twin Rivers. I think it's on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description. And Twin Rivers follows two young brothers who are looking for work, trying to get out of their town, and they travel from town to town, farm to farm with their swags, and they stay in a range of places as well, whether they're working on a farm as a jackaroo or whether they're out in the bush. And it's a good movie. It just kind of shows that that era that I'm trying to emulate here of the 1900s traveling swagman, traveling farm worker, and I'm just fascinated with how these people went around looking for work and the lifestyle that they had. And it's a great part of our history that we should learn more about and teach more about as well. And we can't let that memory die off, because our nation and country is changing, and a lot of the time I think a lot of regular Australian people out there probably don't really know much about our history. They have a very, very limited, or just a very, very basic understanding of what went down in our history. But when you start digging into the history books, there's so much to learn, and not just interesting stories, but these stories help us to reflect on what shaped us as a nation, and I think that's really important for national identity as well. So yeah, I'd highly recommend just looking more into it, reading more books about it, and like I said, there's a few resources there for you to look at. Otherwise, it looks like it's going to be a nice day today. Weather's definitely cleared up, so I might start packing up. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give a comment, give a like. I think you can hype videos now to help give it a bit of a boost. But if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, plenty more free content, free videos to come. Thanks for watching everyone. Have a good one.